Now we're going to mark the 22-inch background square. It's actually easiest if you use a big square ruler. That way you can make sure not only are you in the center vertically, but also you're horizontally straight. You're going to mark the center with a water-soluble pen. You want to mark the width and the length, the full distance. Now make sure when you line this back up after you've done your first marking, you want to make sure that the line that you drew is on a line. That's how you're going to make sure that you're square. And then we'll mark the length and the full width. You will need to also mark in addition 2 lines 6 inches on either side of the center. So I'll put that on my first line. And there's a 6-inch mark, and then I'm going to mark it 6 inches the other way. Again, make sure all your lines are matching up with one that you already have on there, and then mark. You're also going to mark now this intersection, here's the center, the 6 inches over to the right. This intersection is going to be the first stitch position that we're going to hoop. And this is the starting mark. It is 6 inches to the right of center, and that's where we're going to line up our first stitch. The first thing we need to do is to follow the perfect placement instructions. Step 1 is attach the hoop and grid to the module with no fabric. So we'll do that now. Transfer your design from the CD to a USB stick and then insert that stick into your sewing machine. And only transfer the format that your machine is able to read. I'm working on right now a Bernina 830 and they read an EXP. So go ahead and touch the EXP folder to open it. Then you're going to have 4 folders. We're going to start with the center snowman motif, so we'll select that folder first. And we'll select hoop number 1, which is the Christmas tree. Go. The first thing that we need to do is get our perfect placement on the hoop. So turn to the page on perfect placement instructions. And this is what step 1 is. You're attaching your hoop and your grid to the module with no fabric. You have opened the selected design, and now we need to advance to the sewing screen. Just because you open the design does not mean you're in the sewing screen. Usually you're going to have a green check mark or an OK sign. There's going to be some icon that allows you to get to the sewing screen. So go ahead and touch that icon. In this case it was a green check mark. Now we are at the very first stitch of our design. What I'd like you to do is to by hand lower your flywheel till the needle just touches your grid. And we're going to mark that with a post-it note. The arrow of the post-it note should just touch the needle and the grid. Lift the needle back up to its upright position, and we can remove the hoop and the grid from the module. We just marked our first stitch position. Step 2 is hooping the fabric. When you're using extra long hoops or extra wide hoops, it's a good idea to flip the inner hoop over and put double-sided tape on the bottom side of the inner hoop, on the wrong side of the inner hoop. That way when you adhere the hoop to the fabric, it stays and allows you to hoop without any slippage. I'm going to put my grid in. This arrow is marking my first stitch. So this arrow must point to the first stitch mark, which is the mark that is 6 inches to the right of center on the horizontal line. The grid is marked with an arrow pointing to where the first stitch is going to start. And we know from the instructions that it's going to start at this intersection. So I lay the inner hoop with the grid on the fabric so that the lines on the grid are parallel and perpendicular to the lines drawn on the fabric, and that the arrow is actually pointing to that specific spot. So you get it all lined up, make sure your lines are parallel and perpendicular. They don't have to be on those lines, but they just have to be parallel to them. Now I'm pushing this down with the sticky back tape so it's really holding it in place. Now I know where to put my stabilizer. My stabilizer needs to go all the way above the hoop and down this way. If I had just stabilized the back of the fabric, then I would not have stabilizer up here, and that will not work. This is how you know exactly where your stabilizer is going to go. So now I'm going to get my stabilizer and put it underneath this area of my hoop. So now I'm going to take my stabilizer and I'm going to spray it with a little temporary adhesive spray. And I know now that it's going to slide right underneath here. And I'm going to put that right, position it exactly under. Right there is just great. And push it down. And the fabric and the stabilizer become one with the adhesive spray. Now I'm ready to put it into the outer hoop. And you want to make sure, if you have a hoop that screws, that you have looked down inside so you can see the nut and the bolt. You want to make sure that you unscrew it enough so that little nut almost falls off. When it is that loose, then this just slides in and there's no pressure, there's no shoving it out, it just slides right in spot like that, and you're ready to tighten it up. If you will hold a larger hoop from the center section, pull it off your table, you can then reach the screw to tighten it up over here. You want to make sure you tighten it about halfway on one side, never lift it up, turn it around, and tighten up the other side about halfway. Make sure you have pressure in here towards the middle of the hoop so it tightens evenly. And then we will finish tightening it by turning it one more time and do this back side one more time and get it nice and almost as tight as it'll go, but not quite, because we want to tighten it one more time on this side. And we want to make sure it's nice and tight in there, finger tight in there. You can also then push the inner hoop down slightly so it's just barely below the outer hoop, and that'll give you a nice flat surface on your module when you set it on. We are now done with your grid. You can put the grid away, and we're now going to hoop this up on our machine. The next step is to attach your hoop to the module. Now you're going to lower by hand the needle to see how close you are to that intersection. And you might just be a few millimeters off. You'll be very close, but if you need to move it, so because the needle does need to be right on that exact spot, use your move motif icon wherever that is on your particular machine so that you can move the hoop a little bit. Probably will use your zigzag or straight stitch knobs, turn it a little, drop the needle by hand to see if it's right. If it's not, you lift the needle back up and move it again to get it exactly where you need it until your needle is exactly over the spot. You will need to make sure that you have not moved your design out of the hoop. So that's why hooping it correctly is so important. Now on hoop number 1, you're lining up, it is a crosshair. The first color stop is actually a crosshair, so you can line it up exactly on this mark on the fabric. You need to skip this color and you'll actually start sewing with color number 2. So skip to number 2 and now you're ready to start sewing. And you can follow the instructions in your handout. Make sure when you advance to the next color, color number 2, if there's anything on your screen that you need to touch to select it so that you're for sure going to sew out 2, do so that you're not going to accidentally go back and sew out number 1. We're going to take the hoop off and the fabric out, return the hoop to the module. Now you're going to get out of this screen and you're going to go pick your next hooping. So go back to your main menu where you can see your designs, select hoop number 2, and you bring hoop number 2 in. Now on this one there's no crosshair. All you need to do is gently drop your needle so it touches hit the OK sign, perfect. Now drop your needle so it just barely touches your grid. Get your post-it note arrow, touch the needle on the grid wherever that meets. We'll return our needle to the upright position and we will remove the hoop and hoop our fabric where the directions tell us to.